Right. Like safety is a fiction. It's not real. And if you think TSA and the United States is keeping you safe, it's probably not. It's a theater. It's a theatrical project, and um, it's unfortunate to have to say stuff like that. And if you want to go to the extreme, just as an example, like asteroid could hit tomorrow. We don't know. and and was that LSD safe? Didn't matter. um, so another point, like the establishment, the DEA and other organizations like DARE and whatever their European equivalents were, did a multi-decade, multi-billion-dollar campaign of lying and misinformation. And we need to now dig our way out of that. And we do need honesty. A lot of people go too far the other way and want to say, "Oh, there's no harms, there's no risks." Like I was chatting with a gentleman the other day from Gabon, and he was suggesting absolutely zero risk from iboga, and I'm like, like maybe I would have to like really dig into some data here, but I know there's some really serious, scary cardiac stuff that can go down. So, leaning on the data, this is where science becomes really, really important. Because the politicians I was talking about were really impressed when you drop names like UCLA, Hopkins, and other major organizations, right? It's a balancing act, but I always point towards the David Nutt harm scale. Are you familiar with that one from the Lancet, maybe a decade or two ago?
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it got him fired from the UK government. He was the drug czar of the UK at the time, and it showed that alcohol was the most harmful to self and others, and psilocybin, LSD were the least harmful. And this was just ranking like the most commonly used substances at the time in the UK. And how like orders of magnitude smaller harm. Like people should go check that out. Lancet, David Nutt, drug harm scale. And you'll find some really amazing graphics about like the relative harms. And if we're saying alcohol and nicotine are fine, everything's safer than them, according to David Nutt, should be immediately decriminalized, and then working towards a safe, regulated frame so we know what we're getting. Like the biggest harm here comes from ignorance, both on the education side and ignorance about what we're actually being sold and consuming. If every MDMA pill was the same dose, people would be a lot safer and there'd be a lot less hospitalizations. Same thing with, LSD, there'd be a lot less hospitalizations from people panicking if they knew exactly the dose. And similarly with mushrooms, it would be nice. Like mushrooms are incredibly variable, batch to batch. Like I'm super big supporter of home grows. I'm never going to change on that point. But, people need to be aware of the fact, and this is an education problem, that there's so much potency difference, even mushroom to mushroom, like in the same tray. And likewise in ayahuasca, like when we say we think we know what ayahuasca is, like ayahuasca is like thousands of things. There's not one ayahuasca, right? It's like each tradition has their own blend and brew process and added mixtures and ways of serving it, and so much. Like even the aging process, like I'm a little freaked out about aged ayahuasca. Let's make a really moldy product, skim off the mold, boil it, and serve it. It's like I don't want to like denigrate that as a practice. Like I think there could be some interesting magic that happens there, but I would want the users to be informed about that far before they even wrote a check, right, to go. Just it seems risky from from a number of different perspectives for a weak Western biome to jump into one that's so strong in the Amazon. So like it's all over, right? And it's about education, and it's about fighting our way out of, again, a multi-billion-dollar, multi-decade campaign of lies and violence against our people. In our religious movements, and what we think is right and should be available to everybody. It's kind of that's the mission, and that's kind of like how do we fight our way out of that? And that's a really big deal. And fairly too. Like, let's not go so far as we're the ones doing propaganda. Um, I don't know how to do that for everybody. I know how to do it for me. So I think really carefully when I'm trying to speak truth. And then there's like gradients of truth, right? It's like, how much does this person really need to know? Do they really need a 50-minute lecture right now? Or, how do we communicate such dense stuff in a short period of time? I don't know the answer there, but it's important to ask, I think.